Howdy, howdy. It is 1300 on 9/14/2022. It's 1 o'clock for you non-military types. This week for me was a bit of an eye-opener, I would say. Pretty shocking, to be perfectly frank, as far as running into things that I did not think was the current state of the market. Now, what I'm getting into here before I go down the other rabbit hole and the stuff that I typically do. It really is. I sat at an event on Monday and Tuesday where I was training and working with a bunch of folks on general security practices, ways to take care of their home and their business. These were mostly medium-sized businesses. The total sort of value, though, of all the organizations that were there was in the billions of dollars. And the people that were representing these organizations had C-level titles. So they were at the top. They were CIOs, CISOs, those types of folks. I went into this with the thinking that everyone was on a pretty standard playing field. I thought we'd had years of conversations about security and ZT and et cetera, and then we would all understand what we were, each really getting into. Turns out that was not the case. A lot of these were businesses where people do paper goods manufacturing, or they ship product, or they do logistics, or they move oil and gas pipelines, those types of things. Literally, the first session that I gave in the morning afterwards, I had somebody come up and say, I have one comment about your training session. I said, okay, cool. Please tell me. I'd love feedback. And they said, can you not give so many acronyms? And I said, well, which acronyms are you talking about? And they said, well, all of them. And I was like, all of them? I said, no offense, but you're a CIO or CISO for an organization, and you're having issues with the acronyms that I'm using. I said, which ones specifically are throwing you off? And they were like, well, we're pretty unclear on the majority of what you were talking about. I said, we had a conversation about VPNs. I said, you guys know what a VPN is, right? Well, we know what a VPN is, but we don't know what that acronym means. You don't know what virtual private network is. Okay, so that, sure. Well, what about ZTNA? We don't know what ZTNA is. Zero Trust Network Access. You never heard of that. Okay. I even used the term PII and PCI. And as God is my witness, folks did not know what PII meant. They did not understand personally identifiable information. They did not know what PCI was. I had to explain it to them. And then when I started talking about a password manager, there was a lot of confusion about what a password manager is, and if there's something different than a commercial password manager or a private password manager or whatever else. The one that really blew my mind was the person that was in charge of an organization that said they had I think it was somewhere around 7,500 employees globally, and he did not understand what DLP meant, data loss prevention, and his technical title was CISO. So, bit of an eye opener for me. I had to go back and during the breaks between my sessions redo my slides. I had to recalibrate what I was talking about. But these were people that were in charge of organizations. These are people that are responsible for security, for data practices, for all those things that CIOs and CISOs are supposed to be tasked with. And the basic stuff, like the stuff that they teach you, I would consider day zero in cyber education 101. Yeah, it's crazy. I totally was not prepared for that stuff. 100,000% was not ready for that whole thing. And then I gave a speech the next day, and during the night before my speech, which had already been agreed to, all the content and everything else, I had to go redo a bunch of it just because it was too technical. Like, it was too technical for me to put the content. I couldn't say ZT. I had to talk about what zero trust was, which, okay, fine. But then to educate people to what zero trust globally is, the accepted sort of approach and protocol, was a 45-minute session. And these were people that I would have thought would have totally understood this. It was a total fucking wake up call for me because I was just like, whoa, this is, you got your big time CISOs, you got your folks that are engaged in security, whatever else. But then in general, we don't do this enough, I don't think, and we don't get exposed to it enough to get to the C-level people that are running those mid-level organizations. They're just kind of there. And it's not a knock on them. Most of them kind of got woke up and told, hey, guess what? You went to that, I don't know, Security Plus training 8 years ago. You're the CISO. You're the CIO. And they're just thrown into it. It was very, very eye-opening. So I think that my takeaway for this would be is if you're an organization that's working to help others in security, if you're selling technology to those individuals, understand that their level of knowledge or their level of experience in specific sort of cyber strategy and those types of things is probably not what you think it is. And these were organizations, they were folks from California, there were folks from Michigan, there were people from West Texas, there were folks from all over the United States. But it was pretty terrifying. Now, the only other thing that was interesting to me, none of them had their own internal security teams, not a single one. Everyone that I talked to had at least done what I would consider to be the smart thing, and they had outsourced it to somebody, and they all got the concept of you can't be half in and half out on security. They understood that they need someone that is dedicated to that thing. So that was good. And maybe that's why they were just like, fuck it, somebody else is taking care of this. They'll handle it. And then they just forgot about security and didn't, keep up with the tech times, whatever. I don't know. But yeah, it was absolutely a wake-up call for me as far as I thought that I thought we were in a better place, to be perfectly frank, but I guess we're not. Okay. Let's go down and do a little bit of rabbit hole poking here because I've found some interesting stuff recently. There's an article that was published. This was on, this was really recently that talked about ransomware. 13 September, so yesterday, ransomware gangs hacked voice over IP for initial access. Now, a lot of people don't think about voice over IP. A team at Arctic Wolf said that an unnamed organization was compromised by the Lorenz ransomware variant. The group apparently targeted Mitel service app appliance component of My Voice Connect via remote code execution, etc., to obtain a reverse shell. The hackers then used open source TCP tunneling tool Chisel, which I just found that out. Thank you for this article because it's super cool and I'm playing with it now, to pivot in the network. Back in June, CrowdStrike wrote a blog detailing the Mitel vulnerability and a suspected ransomware intrusion attempt using that same CVE, which has been patched, which there is a patch available for a 0-day bug, and urged the customers to fix it. Now, the interesting thing here is that this has been out for a while, and it's something where there's a patch available. It's been noted, it's been notified, people are aware of this, but I couldn't find anything from the actual manufacturer of that particular solution that said, here's how to fix this problem. It was coming from CrowdStrike and from Arctic Wolf. That's a bit of an issue. Now, if you go look and you do some digging, it was not hard at all for me to find vulnerable Mitel things that still would probably be easily compromised with that particular exploit, because most of them have been online for quite a while. In the United States alone, I found 2,982 Mitel running that application that are out there that are misconfigured that you can get to. Again, does this always mean that all 2,982 are vulnerable immediately? No. Give me 10%. That's a few hundred. So that's a pretty good. And then you have to think about the question of, well, what is on a voice over IP system? Would you want someone listening to your phone calls? Would you want someone jumping into your voice over IP network? What can you get to past voice over IP? The fact that there's this many out there is concerning. And the other issue that you run into really quickly is it's not hard at all to tell which system this is running on because it's a very non-standard port. It's something that you would not confuse this with a 443 or an 80 or something else. Like, this is really easy to figure out where the problem is. And when you look at it and you look at the organizations that are listed in here, it's pretty substantial as far as some of the organizations that show up with their names. And the question that I would have is, why aren't these things patched? Like, it's a noted CVE. It's coming from CISA. It's coming from CrowdStrike months ago. Now it's coming again, where someone is saying, like, look, flat out, we are seeing ransomware operators jump into voice over IP networks doing this, and it's still not being patched to the tune of thousands of potential resources. And I mean, I see telecom systems, I see universities, I see broadband providers, I see hospitals, also potential legal organizations, because lawyers like to use voice over IP phones. So, you could have a field day with this type of thing. It needs to get fixed. Also doing a little bit of poking around. The question that I had was reading on a report. Well, some of the reporting that came out recently was about the medical device industry. My question was, if the medical device industry is in the space that it's in and it has the issues it has, what about the organizations that provide pharmaceuticals, the Pfizers, the Modernas, those folks? So doing a little bit of looking around and being pretty specific at what you can find. And again, none of this is illegal. This is all above board. It's pretty interesting to see that an organization that's made as much money as it has, and I won't put their name out here right now because I haven't had a chance to notify them these vulnerabilities, but one of the major organizations that's made billions of dollars in the last few years on vaccine stuff is pretty woefully insecure, to the tune of about 500 misconfigured systems that are talking to the net. And some of these, the last patch dates are really, really old, like decade plus. Mail servers, those types of things. RSA key sitting here. I am, as God is my witness, looking at the RSA key. It's SSH, OpenSSH 7.4. There's the key. And this is for one of those organizations. I see about 6 of those. So you could use the RSA key. You could use the SSH thing. This is the problem. One more thing, just because the medical side's been interesting lately, looking for medical stuff in the United States on a certain system, which is in hospitals, which is being used mainly in pharmacies they have a robotic system that picks your pills and puts your pills in the right dosages and then in the right spot. Hopefully, I would think at some stage a human being gets involved in this and validates that it's right. But this particular one, if you go look and do the right thing, you can find about 700 of these that are open, misconfigured, and talking to the net. All of them are authentication disabled, and they're all right there. So the newest update I see on any of these is Windows 2012. So this is medical stuff. That's pharmaceutical industry stuff, woefully insecure. And I would think that there's so much stuff going on around national security and taking care of people and doing the right thing and whatever else, that this is the type of thing that should be handled. So interesting stuff. Okay, let's go through one of the reports that was published that was very, very interesting. This came out yesterday. This is from SNYK, SNYK. And like I do most of the time, as long as I can remember to, I'll go back and throw this stuff and links into the actual session here. So SNYK's, and if I pronounce that wrong, I'm sorry, SNYK, I think it's SNYK. State of Cloud Security Report reveals 80% of organizations have experienced a severe cloud security incident in the past year. I thought it was going to be closer to 100, but 80% is pretty dang high. Specifically, report found 4/5, 80% of organizations have experienced at least one severe cloud incident in the past year, such as data breach, leakage, intrusion into their environment. 41% of those respondents say cloud native services increased complexity, further complicating their security efforts. And half find deployment is faster as a result of improved cloud security. So I think the thing here to take away is, like, let's flip this on its head and go, basically, if you do cloud security right, you're going to be quicker, better, faster. And statistically speaking, you will be more secure because you're doing it the right way. This is very clear data to me to indicate you can't take your old fucked up on-premise stuff, throw it in the cloud, and all of a sudden you're better off. So that's one point. Going further into that, respondents also indicated that universal risk is going to grow within cloud systems in the near term. 25% of those respondents worry they've recently suffered a cloud breach but are unaware that there has been a breach, which is concerning. I would say that number is probably higher than 25%. The majority, about 60% of security pros and developers, believe that the risk of a cloud data breach of their organization will increase over the next year. Pretty logical. The more you have, the more movement, the more cloud, the more configuration, the more stuff, the more likelihood you have for compromise or risk, etc. I think that one makes a whole lot of sense. As far as the complexity trade-off, 77% of organizations cite problems with poor training and collaboration as the challenge to moving to the cloud. 45% of companies cite demand for engineering resources as the biggest impact of inefficient cloud security. Probably need more cloud security engineers. I think if you're looking for a good place to be as far as employment, go get certified in how to do cloud security for AWS and whatever else. It's just going to continue to get better there. This is a good report. It's on SNCC, and someone said, Gregory Gutman actually said SNCC is short for "so now you know." All right, cool. So there you go. So, look that stuff up. Like I said, I'll try and throw the link into this session as well. And let me cover one of the things that there was another report which was published, and this is from Kroll, Kroll. Cyber risk and CFOs. Overconfidence is costly. This was interesting for me because I haven't run across a lot of reports lately where it's been like CFOs jumping in and saying that this is a thing. Here's the crux of this report. A total of 87% of CFOs are confident in their company's cybersecurity capabilities. The CFOs, the number crunchers, the accountant people. But 4 out of 10 had never had a briefing from information security leadership. Well, what is that? How does that work? How do 87% of folks say that they're confident that security is doing what it needs to be doing, and they're the ones cutting the check for this, but half of them have never actually been briefed on what's going on? How the hell does that work? Doesn't that seem confusing? Comparatively, 66% of CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers, report, though, that their organization was vulnerable. Okay, sure. And 82% said that the average organization in the industry was vulnerable to an attack. Sure, whatever. 71% have suffered more than $5 million in financial losses stemming from cyber incidents in the last 18 months. That's the CFO is reporting again. 82% of the executives in the survey said their companies suffered a loss of valuation, the business valuation of 5% or more following their largest cyber incident in the last 18 months. So everyone runs and says, what's the cost of a breach, whatever else, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's the number that sticks out to me. 82% of the executives, the CFOs, the accountants, the people that are responsible for valuation, other than the CEO, said their companies suffered a loss of the value of the company of 5% or more following a cybersecurity incident. That's pretty staggering. Cybersecurity spending is increasing. 45% of respondents plan to increase the percentage of their overall IT budget dedicated to information security by about 10%, which is in line with what the CAGR for the market looks like. However, the question then becomes, if you're a CFO and there's 87% of you saying that you're confident in what's going on, but you've never been briefed, half of you've never been briefed, why would you continue to throw money into a black hole and not get briefed on what the hell is going on, especially to the tune of 10% of your budget? A couple of more things in here. So the survey shows a sharp disconnect between the confidence CFOs have in their organization's security abilities and the actual significant damage that cyber incidents are inflicting. 99% of the survey respondents are confident to some extent, including 87% who are extremely confident or very confident in their ability to defend a cyber attack. Most of the executives, 61%, said their companies suffered at least 3 significant attacks in the last 18 months. Interestingly enough, more than 40% of finance teams, the CFOs, receive regular briefings. Almost 37% have never received a briefing on cybersecurity at their company. That's crazy. There's really good numbers in here. Guess what the number one avenue of compromise was? Which, again, I don't like to beat this dead horse any more than I have to, because Lord knows it's been beat to death. Business email compromise, aka phishing, 65%. Supply chain, 62%. Publicly exposed database or repository, 53%. Insider threat, 41%. Ransomware, 33%. So interesting stuff, but yet we still continue to pour money down this giant sucking black hole of phishing training. Yeah. What types of impacts did your organization suffer? Private counsel, lawyer fees, vendor costs, crisis communication, insurance premium increase, strengthening cybersecurity following the incident, ransom payment negotiation costs, impairment of brand, intellectual property, and goodwill to the tune of 30%, increased borrowing costs. Interestingly enough, they go to the bank to get more money. The bank says you're all screwed up, and they're actually dinging them on it. Additional capital spending, buying new hardware, software, loss of revenue, 27%, regulatory penalties, 27%, loss of customers, 17%. That one's the one, honestly, that probably should be the biggest kick in the nuts. 17%. So they lost customers because of a cybersecurity incident. That's like almost a fifth. Pretty staggering. Damage to reputation, 17%. This is a great report if you're someone that's trying to validate why you're doing in something in cybersecurity or trying to get executive buy-in. Go show them this stuff, because Kroll is not what you would typically consider to be a hardcore cybersecurity company. They've, lawyers and accountants and those types and consultants and whatever else, but there's really, really good data in here. Matter of fact, I can guarantee this is going to work its way into some of my briefings and that type of thing. So go look that up. One more one to go through, which is worth looking at. And this is not a comment politically. This is just a note on kind of where things seem to be trending nationally. And there's a cyber side of this. So Biden administration plans to hit China with broader curbs on U.S. chip and tool exports. This is by Karen Freifeld and Alexander Alper on Reuters, however you want to sell it. Biden administration plans next month to broaden curbs on U.S. shipments to China of semiconductors used for AI and chip-making tools. Several people with familiar matter said the Commerce Department intends to publish new regulations based on restrictions communicated in letters this year to 3 U.S. companies, KLA, Lam Research, and Applied Materials, Inc. The plan for new rules has not been previously reported. The letters, which the companies publicly acknowledged, forbade them from exporting chip-making equipment to Chinese factories that produce advanced semiconductors with sub-14 nanometer processes unless the sellers obtain Commerce Department licenses. The rules would also codify restrictions in Commerce Department letters sent to NVIDIA, AMD, instructing them to halt shipments on several AI computing chips to China unless they obtain licenses. Some of the sources said the regulations would likely include additional actions against China. The restrictions could also be changed and the rules published later than expected. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that if you're looking at what's going on in the space, as far as national level, I believe there was a legislation recently passed about semiconductor manufacturing in the United States, et cetera. There's still a war going on in Russia and Ukraine. If you're not familiar with that, the Russian president met with the Communist Party leader from China this week. You have to think, the question is, well, if we're going to start doing all the semiconductor stuff and we're going to be cutting ties with those organizations because we get our semiconductors from China and Taiwan and those areas, how is that going to play out nationally? How is that going to cause China and Russia to continue to, homie up? And then on the other side of that equation, will that lead to additional industrial espionage? Because if we're going to be building our own stuff here in the United States, China likes to go off and take stuff that we build here nationally and filter it back over there. International espionage, everybody does it. We steal stuff from other countries too. It's just, that's espionage. But this makes me wonder if there was more to the meeting going on between Xi and Putin this week, because there's new sanctions coming and we're talking about something like semiconductors, which is a big, big deal. On top of that, you've also had the kerfuffle going on lately around Taiwan. Where do we get lots of semiconductors from? Like this sort of stuff begins to build, and I think that the position as far as there's a bridge between national security, those types of things, and then there's a bridge between actual future state and conflict. Espionage sits in there, and cyber is a piece of the espionage chain. So I think that we're going to see more escalation of cyber-specific espionage operations around the semiconductor, I guess you'd call it vector or vertical. Maybe vertical is probably the way to say it. It just is interesting to me. You see these kind of things begin to roll across national level type of concerns, et cetera. So anyway, crazy week, running into lots of stuff. I'll put the links to those reports out there. By the way, if you're listening to this and you have 60 seconds, I'll put a link to the survey I'm doing right now in the comments. Please fill the survey out. I'm releasing all that data out to the public. It's just to learn more about how people view containers and cloud security and those types of things. It's just good to help people out. So take 60 seconds. I know you got 60 seconds. Everybody's got 60 seconds. You don't even have to stop drinking your coffee. Click, 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 and go on about your day. But please help me fill that survey out, share with others so we can get that data out and help other people. Other than that, like I always say, and I hope everybody is able to do it, stay smart, stay safe, and stay secure. And I'll see you on the next one.